When I got home that evening, I had no idea my life was about to change forever. As I turned the corner onto our street, I saw my wife, Emily, standing on the doorstep. She was dressed in a short, tight dress that clung to her curves in a way that made her look like she was ready to conquer the city. My first thought was one of pleasant surprise. "Hey, Em, you look incredible," I called out, a smile spreading across my face. "Where do you want to take me tonight?" Emily's expression shifted from excitement to something colder, and she gave me a look of pure distaste. "I'm not planning on taking you anywhere," she replied curtly. "I am going to a bar with my friends." Before I could respond, she turned on her heel and walked down the steps, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, stunned and hurt, my ego crushed by her words and her actions. The next few days were tense. Emily would leave the house in the evening all dolled up and return late at night without a word of explanation. My attempts to talk to her were met with indifference or outright hostility. I started to suspect that there was more to her nights out than just hanging out with friends. One evening, determined to find out the truth, I followed her. She got into her car and drove to a trendy downtown bar. I parked a few blocks away and walked to the bar, my heart pounding. Inside, I saw her immediately. She was at the bar, laughing and flirting with a man who was definitely not one of her friends. I watched them for a while, my anger boiling. They were too close, too intimate. It was clear that this wasn't just a friendly night out. When they left together, I knew I had to confront her. Back at home, I waited in the dark for Emily to return. When she finally walked through the door, I flipped on the light. "Where have you been?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Out," she replied, her tone dismissive. "Don T lied to me, Emily. I followed you. I saw you with that guy." For a moment she looked shocked, but then her expression hardened. "So what if you did? You don't own me, John." Her words cut deep, but they also fueled my determination. If she thought she could treat me like this, she was sorely mistaken. I decided it was time to teach her a lesson she wouldn't forget. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a series of unexpected events that would unravel the very fabric of our lives. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of determination. I couldn't let Emily's betrayal go unanswered. If she wanted to live her life without considering our marriage, then I needed to take control of the situation. I spent the day gathering my thoughts and planning my next move. By the time Emily returned home that evening, I was ready. I had set up a small camera in the living room to record our conversation. If things escalated, I wanted to have proof. When she walked through the door, I was sitting on the couch, a glass of whiskey in my hand. Emily barely glanced at me before heading towards the bedroom. I stood up and followed her. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, my voice firm. She turned around, a look of annoyance on her face. "What now, John?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my anger in check. "I want to know who he is, the guy you were with last night." Her eyes flashed with defiance. "His name is Nick, and yes, I am seeing him, so what?" Her blatant admission stunned me. I had expected denial, maybe even a fight, but not this. "So you're just going to throw away our marriage for some fling?" Emily laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "Our marriage? John, our marriage has been dead for a long time, you just never noticed." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at her, struggling to process what she was saying. "What are you talking about?" She crossed her arms, her expression cold and unyielding. "I'm saying that I am done pretending. I am done playing the dutiful wife. Nick makes me feel alive, something you haven't done in years." My anger flared. "You think running around with some guy is going to solve your problems? You think that S going to make you happy?" Emily shrugged. "It's better than being stuck in this miserable marriage." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had thought we were just going through a rough patch, something we could work through together. But Emily had already checked out, long before I had even realized there was a problem. "Fine," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "If that is how you feel, then maybe we should end this." Her eyes widened, but she quickly masked her surprise. "Maybe we should." I turned and walked out of the bedroom, slamming the door behind me. My mind was racing, my emotions in turmoil. How had we come to this point? How had I been so blind? As I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, I realized that this wasn't just about Emily's infidelity. This was about reclaiming my life, about standing up for myself. If Emily wanted to end our marriage, then I would make sure she understood the consequences of her actions. I took out my phone and called a lawyer, setting up an appointment for the next day. It was time to protect my interests and make sure that Emily didn't get away with her betrayal unscathed. The next day, I woke up with a sense of grim resolve. Emily had made her choice, and now it was my turn. I dressed quickly and headed to the lawyer's office, my mind set on getting through this with as little damage to myself as possible. Sitting across from my lawyer, Karen, I laid out everything that had happened. She listened intently, nodding as she took notes. "It sounds like you are dealing with a tough situation, John," she said sympathetically. "But you have options. The first thing we need to do is gather evidence of her infidelity. This will help protect your interests in the divorce." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief. "I've already started recording our conversations," I admitted. "Good. We need to be thorough. Keep documenting everything. If you can get proof of her relationship with this Nick guy, it'll be even better." I left Karen's office feeling more prepared, but also more determined. Emily thought she could just walk all over me, but she was wrong. That evening, I decided to dig deeper into Emily's activities. I knew her phone was the key. If I could access her messages, I'd have concrete proof. I waited until she went to take a shower, then grabbed her phone from the nightstand. I quickly entered her passcode, something I had memorized long ago, and started searching. There it was. Messages from Nick, explicit, detailed, and full of plans for their next rendezvous. I felt a sickening mix of anger and betrayal as I read through them. They had been seeing each other for months. I took screenshots of everything, then put the phone back exactly where I found it. Emily came out of the bathroom, oblivious to what I had just discovered. I watched her, feeling a cold detachment settle over me. Over the next few days, I continued to gather evidence. I took photos of her leaving the house all dressed up, noted the times she came home late, and even managed to snap a few pictures of her and Nick together. Every piece of evidence added to my growing file. One night, as I was reviewing the screenshots, I got a text from an old friend, Mike. We hadn't spoken in a while, but he had always been someone I could count on. "Hey man, long time no see. Want to grab a beer?" I stared at the message for a moment, then replied, "Yeah, I could use one. Meet at Joe's? Perfect. See you in an hour." When I walked into Joe's, Mike was already at the bar, a beer in front of him. He stood up and gave me a bear hug. "John, how have you been?" I sighed, taking a seat next to him. "Not great, Mike. Emily and I are having problems." Mike listened as I poured out the whole story. He shook his head in disbelief. "Man, that's rough. I had no idea." "Yeah, neither did I said bitterly. "But I'm not just going to sit around and take it. I've got a plan." Mike raised an eyebrow. "A plan?" I nodded, a determined look on my face. "I am gathering evidence, preparing for a divorce. But I'm also going to make sure Emily regrets this. She thinks she can walk all over me, but she's got another thing coming." Mike smiled, clinking his glass against mine. "Here's to taking control of your life, then." As we sat there, talking and drinking, I felt a sense of camaraderie and support that I had been missing. It was a reminder that I wasn't alone, that I had friends who had my back. When I got home that night, Emily was already asleep. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, watching her for a moment. She looked so peaceful, so unaware of the storm that was about to hit. I turned away, feeling a renewed sense of determination. This was far from over, and Emily was going to learn that actions have consequences. The following days passed in a blur of tension and quiet preparations. Emily continued her nightly excursions, oblivious to the fact that I was documenting every move she made. I kept gathering evidence, securing my position for the impending confrontation. One evening, as I was reviewing the latest batch of incriminating texts and photos, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "John, we need to talk. It's about Emily. Nick." I stared at the message, disbelief mixing with curiosity. What could Nick possibly have to say to me? Was this some kind of trap? I decided to take the bait. Fine. Where and when? A few minutes later, the response came. "Tonight, 8 p.m., at the park near your house." At 8 p.m. sharp, I arrived at the park, my heart pounding. I scanned the area and spotted Nick sitting on a bench, looking anxious. I approached cautiously, ready for anything. Nick looked up as I neared, his expression conflicted. "John, thanks for meeting me." I stood a few feet away, arms crossed. "Make it quick, what do you want?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I know this is awkward, to say the least, but you deserve to know the truth." I raised an eyebrow. "The truth? You mean the truth about you and Emily?" Nick nodded. "Yes, but there's more. I didn't know how deep I was getting into this until recently. Emily, she's been using me." "Using you?" I echoed, skepticism in my voice. "How?" "She's been manipulating both of us," he said, his voice heavy with guilt. "At first I thought she genuinely cared about me, but then I started noticing things. She's been talking about using the divorce to get a large settlement from you. She's planning to take everything, John." My blood ran cold. I had suspected Emily of cheating, but this was something else entirely. "Why are you telling me this?" Nick looked down, ashamed. "Because I realized I was being played, and because I feel terrible for what I have done. I never wanted to ruin your life." I studied him for a moment, trying to gauge his sincerity. "What do you suggest we do?" "We can work together," Nick said, desperation in his eyes. "Expose her plans. If we can prove she's been manipulating both of us, it will help your case in the divorce. We can protect ourselves." I considered his proposal. It was risky, but if Nick was telling the truth, this could be the leverage I needed to turn the tables on Emily. "Fine," I said finally. "But if you are lying to me, Nick, you'll regret it." He nodded, relief washing over his face. "I swear, John, I want to make this right." Over the next few days, Nick and I devised a plan to gather more evidence against Emily. He continued to see her, pretending to be oblivious to her manipulation, while secretly recording their conversations and forwarding them to me. One night, Nick managed to record a particularly damning conversation. Emily was talking about how she planned to use the divorce to get a significant portion of my assets, how she had been preparing for this for months. Armed with this new evidence, I met with Karen again. She reviewed the recordings, her expression growing more serious by the minute. "This changes everything, John," she said finally. "With this evidence, we can prove that Emily has been acting in bad faith. This will significantly strengthen your position in the divorce." I nodded, feeling a sense of grim satisfaction. Emily thought she had everything under control, but her house of cards was about to come crashing down. That evening, I confronted Emily. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone when I walked in. "We need to talk," I said, my voice cold. She looked up, irritation flashing in her eyes. "Again? What is it now, John?" "I know everything, Emily. About you and Nick, about your plans for the divorce." For a moment, she looked genuinely shocked. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and played the recording of her conversation with Nick. Her face drained of color as the damning words filled the room. "How? How did you get that?" she stammered. "Nick came to me," I said, enjoying the look of horror on her face. "He realized you were using him just like you were using me." Emily's eyes filled with panic. "John, please let me explain." "No," I cut her off. "You've done enough damage. I've already filed for divorce, and with this evidence, you want to get a penny more than you deserve." She collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. "John, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I turned away, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. "It's too late for apologies, Emily." As I walked out of the room, I knew that the hardest part was over. But the aftermath of Emily's betrayal would linger, and the fight was far from finished. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and emotional turmoil. Emily's initial shock had worn off, replaced by a cold determination to fight back. She had hired a high-powered attorney, and I knew this divorce was going to be a battle. Karen and I met frequently to strategize. "We have a strong case," she assured me, "but we need to be prepared for anything. Emily's lawyer is known for playing dirty." I nodded, feeling the weight of the situation. "I'll do whatever it takes." The first court hearing was tense. Emily sat across from me, her face a mask of defiance. Her lawyer, a slick, confident man named Richard, began by questioning the validity of our evidence. "This recording, Richard said, holding up the damning audio file, was obtained without my client S consent. It is inadmissible. Karen stood up, her voice steady. Your Honor, the recording was obtained by Mr. Nick Thompson, who is a party to the conversation. It is admissible under state law. The judge nodded. Objection overruled. The recording will be admitted. Richard scowled but continued his line of attack. Mr. Thompson has a vested interest in this case. How can we be sure he is telling the truth? Karen smiled slightly. We have corroborating evidence, Your Honor. Photographs, text messages, and more recordings that show a clear pattern of deceit and manipulation by Mrs. Emily Collins. The judge reviewed the evidence, his expression growing more serious. This is compelling. We'll proceed with this evidence. As the hearing continued, it became clear that Emily S. lawyer was struggling to counter our claims. Richard S. arguments grew more desperate, and Emily S. confidence began to waver. After the hearing, Karen and I walked out of the courtroom feeling a sense of cautious optimism. We made a good start, she said, but there's still a long way to go. Over the next few weeks, the legal battle intensified. Emily S. lawyer tried every tactic in the book to discredit me, from questioning my finances to implying that I had driven Emily to infidelity. But Karen was relentless, countering each argument with calm, factual evidence. Nick continued to support our case, providing additional information about Emily S.'s plans and behavior. He seemed genuinely remorseful, and I began to believe that he was sincere in wanting to make things right. One evening I received a call from Karen. John, I have some news. Emily S. lawyer just contacted me. They want to negotiate a settlement. I was stunned. A settlement? Why now? Richard knows they are losing. The evidence is too strong. They want to avoid a prolonged court battle. The next day we met with Emily and her lawyer in a conference room. Emily looked worn out, her once defiant demeanor now replaced with resignation. Richard cleared his throat. We've reviewed the evidence, and it's clear that continuing this fight is not in anyone's best interest. We were prepared to offer a fair settlement. Karen and I exchanged a glance. Let S hear it, she said. Richard laid out the terms. Emily would agree to a no-fault divorce, relinquish any claims to additional assets beyond what we had initially agreed upon, and drop her demands for spousal support. In return, I would agree to a fair division of our shared assets and ensure that the process was as smooth as possible. It was a far cry from what Emily had initially sought, but it was fair. I turned to Emily, who was avoiding my gaze. Is this what you want? She looked up, her eyes filled with tears. I just want this to be over, John. I never wanted it to go this far. I sighed, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. All right, let's settle this. We finalized the details, and the divorce was soon completed. Emily moved out, and we divided our assets according to the agreement. The house felt emptier without her, but I knew it was for the best. Nick and I continued to keep in touch. He had ended things with Emily and was trying to rebuild his life. We met for a beer one evening, reflecting on the whirlwind of events. You did the right thing, John, he said. Emily was toxic, and she would have only brought you more misery. I nodded, taking a sip of my drink. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate your help, even though it all started because of you. He looked down, ashamed. I know, and I am truly sorry for that. But I'm glad I could help you in the end. As I drove home that night, I felt a sense of closure. The legal battle was over, but the emotional scars would take time to heal. I had emerged stronger, more resilient, and ready to start a new chapter in my life. But little did I know, the aftermath of the divorce would bring even more unexpected twists. The divorce was finalized, but the emotional aftermath lingered. The house felt emptier without Emily, and I struggled with the sense of loss and betrayal. Friends and family were supportive, but it was difficult to move on. One evening, as I was sitting in my living room, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Nick standing there, looking anxious. Nick, what's up? I asked, surprised. John, we need to talk. Can I come in? I stepped aside, letting him in. We sat down, and he looked at me with a serious expression. I've been doing some thinking, Nick began, and I realize there's something you need to know. I frowned, wondering what else could possibly come out. What is it? Emily wasn't just seeing me, he said, his voice tense. There were others. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. Others? You mean she was cheating with more than one person? Nick nodded. Yes, she had this pattern. She would find someone new, use them for a while, then move on. I found out after we ended things that she was seeing someone else even while she was with me. Anger flared within me. Why didn't you tell me this before? I only found out recently, Nick explained. I thought you deserved to know. She's been manipulating a lot of people, not just us. I sat back, processing the information. Emily's betrayal was even deeper than I had imagined. Thanks for telling me, Nick. He nodded, looking relieved. I just wanted to make sure you knew the whole truth. After Nick left, I sat in the living room, my mind racing. Emily's actions were more calculated and destructive than I had realized. I decided it was time to take a final step to protect myself and ensure she couldn't hurt anyone else. The next morning, I called Karen. I need your help with something, I said, explaining what Nick had told me. Karen was supportive. We can file a restraining order against Emily to protect you from any further manipulation or contact. And if you want, we can reach out to the other victims and see if they want to take legal action. It was a drastic step, but I knew it was necessary. Emily had caused enough damage, and it was time to put an end to it. Over the next few weeks, Karen helped me gather testimonies from other people Emily had manipulated. It was a painful process, but it also brought a sense of solidarity. I wasn't the only one who had been hurt by her actions. We filed the restraining order and submitted the testimonies to the court. Emily was served with the order, and the court took swift action, granting it based on the overwhelming evidence of her manipulative behavior. Emily tried to contact me several times after that, but I ignored her calls and messages. I needed to move on, and engaging with her would only drag me back into the chaos. As the weeks turned into months, I started to rebuild my life. I focused on my work, spent more time with friends, and even started going to the gym regularly. The routine helped, and slowly but surely, I began to heal. One evening, I received an unexpected call from Mike. Hey, John, how are you doing? I'm getting better, I replied. What is up? I have some news that might interest you. There is a new woman in town, and she's been asking about you. I raised an eyebrow. Asking about me? Yeah, she moved here recently, and we met at the gym. She mentioned she's heard about you and your work. Thought you might want to meet her. I hesitated for a moment, then decided it was time to take a chance. All right, Mike, set it up. The next evening, I found myself at a small cafe, waiting to meet this mysterious new woman. When she walked in, I was struck by her confidence and warmth. She introduced herself as Rachel, and we quickly fell into easy conversation. Over the next few weeks, Rachel and I spent more time together. She was kind, intelligent, and understanding of my past. She never pressed for details, allowing me to share at my own pace. One evening, as we were sitting on the patio of a cozy restaurant, Rachel looked at me, her eyes filled with empathy. You've been through a lot, John, but I see strength in you. You've come out of this stronger. Her words touched me deeply. For the first time in a long while, I felt hope for the future. Thanks, Rachel. I appreciate that. As we continued our evening, I realized that I was finally ready to let go of the past and embrace whatever the future held. Emily's betrayal had left scars, but those scars had made me stronger, and with Rachel by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. Months passed, and life with Rachel continued to flourish. She was everything I needed after the tumultuous years with Emily, kind, supportive, and genuinely interested in building a future together. We took things slow, both of us cautious yet hopeful. One evening, as we sat in my living room, Rachel turned to me with a serious expression. John, there's something I've been meaning to talk to you about. I set my drink down, suddenly feeling nervous. What is it? I think it's time we took a trip, she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. A fresh start, somewhere away from all the memories of the past. A trip sounded perfect. It was time to put everything behind me for good. Where were you thinking? Rachel smiled. How about a cabin in the mountains, just us, nature, and a chance to reconnect with ourselves? I loved the idea. A few weeks later, We found ourselves driving up a winding mountain road surrounded by towering pines and breathtaking views. The cabin was cozy and secluded, the perfect place to escape. The first few days were blissful. We hiked, cooked together, and spent long evenings by the fireplace talking about everything and nothing. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. One morning, as we sat on the porch drinking coffee, Rachel reached out and took my hand. "John, I know you've been through a lot, and I want you to know that I am here for you no matter what." I squeezed her hand, grateful for her presence in my life. "Thanks, Rachel. I feel like I'm finally ready to move on." "Good," she said with a smile, "because I have something for you." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small box. My heart skipped a beat. "What is this?" "Open it and see," she said, her eyes shining with anticipation. I opened the box to find a beautiful watch. It was simple yet elegant, with a sleek black band and a classic face. "Rachel, this is amazing, thank you." She smiled, leaning in to kiss me. I thought it was time for a fresh start in every way, a new watch for a new beginning. We spent the rest of the trip deepening our connection. I felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to face the future with Rachel by my side. When we returned home, life fell into a comfortable rhythm. I focused on work, continued to see friends, and spent as much time with Rachel as possible. Our relationship grew stronger every day. One evening, as we were cooking dinner together, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I hesitated before opening it, my mind flashing back to the turmoil Emily had caused, but curiosity got the best of me. "John, it's Emily. I need to talk to you. Please." I felt a surge of anger and disbelief. After everything, she still had the nerve to contact me? I showed the message to Rachel, who looked concerned. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I sighed, feeling the weight of the decision. "I don't know. Part of me wants to ignore her, but another part of me thinks maybe I should hear her out. For closure." Rachel nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Whatever you decide, I am here for you." The next day, I met Emily at a cafe downtown. She looked different, tired, worn out. As she sat down, she gave me a tentative smile. "John, thank you for meeting me," she said softly. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "What do you want, Emily?" She took a deep breath, her eyes filling with tears. "I just wanted to apologize for everything. I know I hurt you, and I know I can undo the damage I've caused, but I've been going to therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did. I realize now how wrong I was." I listened, feeling a mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to lash out, to tell her how much pain she had caused, but another part of me felt a strange sense of closure. "I appreciate the apology, Emily," I said finally, "but you need to understand that what you did has lasting consequences. I've moved on and I am happy now. I don't want to dwell on the past anymore." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I just needed to say it, for my own peace of mind. I'm truly sorry, John." I stood up, feeling a sense of finality. "Take care of yourself, Emily." As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The chapter with Emily was finally, truly closed. I returned home to Rachel, feeling lighter and more at peace than I had in years. When I walked through the door, Rachel greeted me with a warm smile. "How did it go?" "It went well," I said, pulling her into a hug. "It's over. Really over." Rachel hugged me tightly, and I knew that with her by my side I could face anything. The past was behind me, and a new, brighter future lay ahead. Life with Rachel continued to blossom. We spent weekends exploring new places, shared quiet evenings at home, and our bond deepened with each passing day. I was finally feeling at peace, free from the shadows of my past with Emily. One Friday evening, Rachel and I were at our favorite restaurant, celebrating her recent promotion at work. As we laughed and toasted to her success, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and felt a chill run down my spine. It was a message from an unknown number. "John, it's urgent. Call me. Nick." I frowned, my good mood evaporating. Rachel noticed the change in my expression. "Everything okay?" "I'm not sure," I said, showing her the message. "It's from Nick." Rachel's eyes widened with concern. "Do you think it as serious?" "I don't know, but I should find out." I excused myself and stepped outside to call Nick. He answered on the first ring. "John, thank God. We need to talk." "What is going on, Nick?" I asked, anxiety creeping into my voice. Emily. She's in trouble. Big trouble. I felt a mix of anger and concern. "What do you mean?" "She's been involved in some shady business dealings. She's in deep, and now she is being investigated. She called me, desperate for help. She's scared, John." I sighed, feeling the weight of the situation. "Why are you telling me this, Nick? What do you want me to do? Emily needs your help. She's asking for a lawyer, and she thought you might be willing to recommend someone." The last thing I wanted was to get involved in Emily's mess again, but I couldn't ignore the fact that she was in serious trouble. "Fine," I said reluctantly. "I'll see what I can do." I returned to the table where Rachel was waiting, her eyes filled with worry. "What happened?" I explained the situation, and she listened, her expression thoughtful. "John, it's up to you whether you want to help her," Rachel said gently. "But remember, you're not obligated to save her from her own mistakes." I nodded, appreciating her support. "I know, but I can just ignore this." The next day I contacted Karen and explained Emily's predicament. She agreed to take the case, and I passed along her contact information to Nick. A week later, I received a call from Karen. "John, I've spoken to Emily. It is worse than I thought. She's been involved in some serious fraud. She is facing criminal charges." My heart sank. Despite everything, I didn't want to see Emily go to jail. "Is there anything we can do?" "We were working on it," Karen said. "But it's going to be a tough battle." Days turned into weeks, and the situation with Emily weighed heavily on my mind. Rachel was incredibly supportive, but I could sense the strain it was putting on our relationship. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching TV, Rachel turned to me. "John, I need to ask you something." I muted the TV and looked at her. "What is it? Are you still in love with Emily?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I was taken aback. "No, Rachel, not at all. Why would you think that?" She sighed, looking down at her hands. "It's just, you were so involved in her situation. I can help but wonder if there's still something there." I took her hands in mine, looking into her eyes. "Rachel, I am helping Emily because it's the right thing to do. Not because I still have feelings for her. You are the one I love. You are my future." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she smiled through them. I just needed to hear that. I pulled her into a hug, feeling a deep sense of relief. "I'm here with you, Rachel. Always." As the legal battle for Emily continued, I maintained my focus on my relationship with Rachel. We grew even closer, our trust and love deepening despite the external pressures. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Rachel turned to me. "John, there's something I've been thinking about." I looked at her, curious. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I want us to move in together. I think we're ready for that step." A surge of happiness filled me. "Rachel, I would love that. I would love." We spent the next few weeks searching for a new place, and finally found a beautiful apartment that felt like home from the moment we walked in. Moving in together was a significant step, and it marked a new chapter in our lives. As we settled into our new home, the situation with Emily reached a climax. Karen called with an update. "John, we managed to get a plea deal for Emily. She'll avoid jail time but will be on probation and has to pay restitution." It was a relief to hear, and I hoped it would be a wake-up call for Emily. I thanked Karen for her efforts and felt a sense of closure. That evening, as Rachel and I sat on the balcony of our new apartment, looking out at the city lights, I felt a profound sense of peace. "We made it," I said, squeezing Rachel's hand. She smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder. "Yes, we did. And there's so much more ahead for us." As I held her close, I knew that no matter what challenges came our way, we would face them together. The past was behind us, and our future was bright. Life with Rachel was everything I had hoped for and more. We settled into our new apartment, decorating it with pieces that reflected both our tastes. Our days were filled with laughter and our nights with quiet intimacy. I felt like I had finally found my true partner. One evening, as we were enjoying a home-cooked dinner, Rachel's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and frowned. "It is my brother James. I need to take this." I nodded, continuing to eat as she stepped out onto the balcony. After a few minutes, she returned, her expression troubled. "Everything okay?" I asked, concerned. Rachel sighed, sitting back down. "James is going through a tough time. He's having problems with his business and needs some financial help. Do you want to help him?" I asked, trying to gauge her feelings. She nodded. "Yes, but it is complicated. He's asking for a significant amount, and I don't have that kind of money saved up." I took her hand. "We'll figure it out together. Let's look at our finances and see what we can do." Rachel gave me a grateful smile. "Thank you, John. I knew I could count on you." We spent the next few days reviewing our finances and discussing how we could support James. It was a challenging situation, but I was determined to help Rachel and her family. However, as we worked through the details, I noticed Rachel becoming more withdrawn and stressed. One evening, after a particularly tense conversation about the money, I found Rachel sitting alone on the balcony, staring out at the city lights. "Hey," I said softly, joining her. "What's on your mind?" She looked at me, tears in her eyes. "John, I'm scared. I feel like everything is falling apart." I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close. "We'll get through this, Rachel. We've faced so much already. We can handle this too." She nodded, leaning into me. "I know. It's just, I don't want my problems to become your problems." I kissed her forehead. "We are a team. Your problems are my problems. We'll face them together." The next day, as we were finalizing our plan to help James, I received an unexpected call from Karen. "John, I hate to bring this up, but there was something you need to know," she said, her tone serious. "What is it?" I asked, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "It's about Emily. She's been reaching out to people, trying to dig up dirt on you. She is claiming that you were abusive and manipulative during your marriage. She has even contacted your employer." I felt a surge of anger. "Are you serious? Why would she do this?" "I think she is trying to retaliate for the divorce and the legal trouble she is in. We need to address this before it gets out of hand." I thanked Karen and hung up, my mind racing. Emily's actions could have serious repercussions, not just for me, but for my relationship with Rachel and my professional life. That evening, I told Rachel about the situation with Emily. She listened, her expression growing more concerned. "John, this is serious. We need to take action to protect you." "I know," I said, feeling the weight of the situation. "Karen is working on it, but I need to be prepared for whatever Emily might try." Rachel squeezed my hand. "We'll get through this together, just like everything else." The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and tense conversations. Karen helped me prepare a counter-narrative, gathering statements from friends and colleagues who could attest to my character. It was a stressful time, but having Rachel by my side made it bearable. One evening, as we were finally settling down after a long day, Rachel turned to me. "John, I've been thinking. Maybe we should take a short trip just to get away from all this stress for a while." The idea sounded perfect. "Where do you want to go?" "How about a weekend at the beach? Just us, the ocean, and some time to relax." I smiled, feeling a sense of relief at the thought. "That sounds amazing. Let's do it." We booked a small beachfront cottage and left the following Friday. The moment we arrived, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The sound of the waves, the salty breeze, and the simple joy of being with Rachel made everything else seem distant. We spent the weekend exploring the beach, enjoying seafood dinners, and simply being together. One afternoon, as we sat on the sand watching the sunset, Rachel took my hand. "John, I love you. I know things have been tough, but I am so grateful to have you in my life." I looked into her eyes, feeling a surge of love and gratitude. "I love you too, Rachel. We are stronger together, and we'll get through anything that comes our way." As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a sense of peace. The storm with Emily was far from over, but I knew that with Rachel by my side, I could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The trip to the beach was exactly what we needed. Rachel and I returned home feeling rejuvenated and ready to tackle whatever challenges lay ahead. The respite was short-lived, however, as the issues with Emily quickly resurfaced. One morning, as I was heading out for work, I received a call from my boss, Mr. Jenkins. His voice was tense. "John, can you come to my office immediately?" My heart sank. Of course, I'll be there in a few minutes. When I arrived, Mr. Jenkins was waiting with a serious expression. John, we've received some troubling information. Emily has made formal accusations against you, claiming you were abusive during your marriage. I felt a surge of anger and frustration. Those accusations are false. She's trying to retaliate because of the divorce and the legal trouble she has in. Mr. Jenkins nodded. I believe you, John, but the board is concerned. We need to address this head on. Karen had prepared me for this possibility. I handed Mr. Jenkins a folder containing the statements from friends and colleagues. These are character statements from people who know me well. They attest to my integrity and refute Emily's claims. He reviewed the documents, nodding. This helps, but we need to be cautious. I'll present this to the board. In the meantime, try to stay focused on your work. I left his office feeling a mix of relief and anger. Emily's lies were causing more damage than I had anticipated. I called Karen to update her, and she reassured me that we were prepared for whatever Emily might throw our way. That evening, as I was venting my frustrations to Rachel, my phone buzzed with a message from Nick. John, we need to meet. Emily is planning something big. I sighed, feeling the weight of the situation. Rachel, Nick says Emily is planning something. I need to meet with him. Rachel nodded, her expression supportive. Be careful, John. Let me know if you need anything. I met Nick at a quiet cafe, where he looked visibly anxious. John, Emily is planning to go public with her accusations. She has contacted a journalist who is willing to publish her story. My heart sank. Why is she doing this? What does she hope to gain? Nick shook his head. Revenge, I think. She wants to ruin your reputation. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my rising anger. We need to stop her. Do you have any proof of her intentions? Nick nodded, handing me a USB drive. This contains recordings of her conversations with the journalist. It proves she is fabricating her story. I thanked Nick and immediately called Karen, who arranged for an emergency meeting. We reviewed the recordings, and Karen's expression grew serious. This is good, John. We can use this to discredit her story, but we need to act fast. The next morning, we filed for an injunction to prevent Emily from publishing her false accusations. The court granted a temporary restraining order, buying us some time to build our case. The legal battle intensified over the next few weeks. Emily fought back fiercely, but the evidence we had gathered was compelling. The recordings from Nick, the character statements, and my clean record all worked in our favor. One afternoon, I received a call from Karen. John, the court has ruled in our favor. Emily is prohibited from publishing her story and will face penalties for her false accusations. I felt a surge of relief. Thank you, Karen. I couldn't have done this without you. As the legal dust settled, I reflected on the tumultuous journey I had been through. Emily's attempts to ruin my life had ultimately failed, and I emerged stronger and more resilient. One evening, as Rachel and I sat on our balcony enjoying a glass of wine, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Rachel, thank you for standing by me through all of this. I don't know what I would have done without you. She smiled, squeezing my hand. We're a team, John. We face everything together. As we watched the city lights twinkle in the distance, I knew that the worst was behind us. The storm had passed, and a new chapter was beginning, one filled with love, trust, and the promise of a brighter future. With Rachel by my side, I was ready to embrace whatever came next, confident that together we could face any challenge.